I use a few brushes. Like one is very important, this big flat one. Also, I have these really amazing brushes that I bought in China. They're calligraphy brushes, so they're all sable. They're super good. They're wonderful, really good because they have a tip, and of course the rigger brush, which is for details, and maybe a couple of like this smaller flat. But anyway, so please make sure, feel free to stop anytime, ask me questions. If I'm going too fast, tell me to slow down. If you don't see the picture very well, also let me know. I'm just moving a little bit this camera. Okay, so everything is good. So we're gonna loosen up, have a lot of fun, no worries, no mistakes in watercolor. And yeah, we're gonna learn how to loosen up really in watercolor. That's what watercolor is all about. We just let it flow. And first things first, I'm using a half sheet today, like 15 by 22. And usually I just have it at a kind of an angle a bit. So I like to let the water flow, but I want to keep it flat so you guys can see. In this case, I'll just keep it flat. But from time to time, I will lift it to let some paint just go down. And I know we have only 1.5 hours, so we'll go quickly. Now, drawing and sketching. Very basic, very, very basic, very rough. Just look at the whole silhouette here in this village. I see, a little dip just goes pretty much like this, the composition, not quite in the middle, so I think this is where my horizon line is gonna be. Every time we paint landscapes, we have to be conscious of where this horizon or eye level line is. So this is gonna be somewhere here. And again, very, very roughly. Hopefully you see. If you don't see,
Lucy, I don't see the paper at all.
you don't see the paper at all?
Yeah, maybe I need to.
Maybe you need to change the view to, let's see, like on the upper right, you should have a view, gallery view, and you will see Lucy's canvas as one of the participants, basically. Do you guys see anything?
Yeah, I just see the gallery view as well.
Right, but do you see my paper?
No.
It's a separate thing in gallery.
I see it.
Yeah.
I can see it.
You see the paper, you see this, right? The paper?
You have to click on that one, not speaker view.
Okay, so yeah, the speaker view, just ignore. I'm not important. Just click on that. If you see that thumbnail with Lucy's canvas, that's it. That's what you're gonna see. Let me see what I can do. Okay, how about this?
Yeah, I just see the thumbnail for Lucy canvas. I don't know how to enlarge that.
Huh.
You
Well,
can click on it, and then there's a little drop down that lets you pin it. Do you see where when you click on that thumbnail in the little upper right, it says pin to top or something like that? Click that.
Dang, see, that works.
oh, perfect. Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you. Awesome. There's always somebody who really, really, who is good at this. I'm better with WebEx for some weird reason, and WebEx is not that great, let me tell you. So
Yeah, it doesn't, I'm unable to pin it. When I click, it doesn't highlight it.
okay,
When I
so
click on the Lucy canvas, it doesn't highlight.
If you right click it, it might work.
so just if you hover it on the upper right, there should be some like little dots, and you will have a drop down. Adi, do you see anything?
Yes, I was able, when I double click, I had the option of pin and something else on Lucy's canvas. So I can see now.
Okay, I have it now, thanks.
Oh, sorry guys. Okay, so
Thank you.
all right, so that shouldn't, yeah. My face is not important, the canvas is very important. So hopefully we all see it, right? Okay, good, good. So let's quickly sketch. Let's very quickly sketch what we have, and we're going to have it very rough. I just want to make sure that I'm expecting one more person to come in, but so I'm just keeping an eye on the room. So very roughly, sorry for my head popping in. So here, this is closer view, you know, the foreground is this blue house right here. And make sure your perspective is correct. So very rough, I'm just placing these. And as you can see, this photo somehow is has distorted the images, which is okay. Actually, I don't mind this distortion, but make sure your perspective is correct. So we're going to follow the lines going all down. Anything that's above the horizon is going to be following this movement, and then anything that's below the horizon is going to be going in this direction. So just very rough. We're sketching here, so there's a little balcony here. Just look at the big shape again, the whole outline, and okay, so just the outline going like this. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, you know, a perfect architectural drawing. So make sure, you know, houses, they do have two sides. So one is obviously this side, and then there is another going this way. So that will be one, it will be in the shadow. And we keep going, and I'm just very roughly showing how things are here. So pay attention to sizes, space, positioning. Again, look at the negative space, how much space you have around those houses. So that will be an indication and kind of a guide for you at looking at the negative space. So don't forget this nice cool blue house. That's going to be kind of our leading point going in. And again, we're just following these lines. Eventually, anything above the horizon is going to go down this way. Anything below is going to follow this direction. So here we have some more lines. And again, I'm just roughly putting lines around just so I know where things are going to be. But don't need to be too precise, too exact. We will finalize this eventually. And hopefully this is not too complicated. Okay, somebody admit. Okay, so okay, there's Keisha. She showed up. Okay, so all right, so we're continuing. Hi, Keisha. Here we all are. Keisha, I'm not pronouncing it correctly, most likely. Okay, so very rough again. Here, so there's at the very bottom, there is where it's touching the water, this area. I think there is like a little wall. So see how I'm just following the perspective again. And the houses, as they go farther away, they're getting smaller and smaller. So, okay. And if it's not perfect, if your drawing is not perfectly precise, don't worry. It's going to be great because we will give our own flair to this whole thing. So, all right. And we have some more. Here, just little rooftops popping in. Again, there's this wall, maybe some flowers, but again, very rough. On this side, we shouldn't spend more than 15 minutes really on the drawing. So very roughly, just see the basic shapes. And again, with cityscapes, perspective, very important. And again, anything below the horizon goes this way, anything above, I keep repeating that is important. So here's some nice little rooftops. There is a canopy that's going this way, and then it goes that way. And then there's the water below. And we will be painting some very nice reflection being cast by these buildings. But before we get to that, let's quickly sketch. There's something coming here, very steep. These rooftops are very cool. We will have a lot of fun painting them because they have these nice chimneys. So, and you can exaggerate some things and we'll add some fun elements. There's something else here. And feel free to ask me any questions regarding perspective or show me your drawing if you have any questions. But again, just basically look at all these houses as planes. It's like one plane going this way, another plane going the other way. It's like a 3D form. So, okay, so that's pretty much it. I wouldn't even go any further. Yeah, I know there will be some reflection here, but I don't need any more information for my painting. So let me know if you guys ready. And normally I wouldn't draw it that dark. I wouldn't be pressing so hard. It will be lighter because it may be showing too much, but it's still okay. I like actually seeing pencil lines on final paintings. I just keep all my pencil lines, so I don't even erase them after it's finished. I think they add something to it. So again, see how the left side is a little bit kind of taking 1/3, the right side is taking 2/3 of our paper, and almost like seeing two triangles, one going here, one going there. Just always look at the big picture. Don't worry about any of the details, none of this cool funky things that is the details on the buildings. We'll add those eventually, but right now we are only looking at the big picture. So, and I do prefer painting really standing because somehow I can see my paper better as long as your paper is not at an angle, because sometimes we see things kind of in perspective and they get a bit skewed and changed. So yeah, make sure at least you look at it kind of parallel to your eye. Eyes, plural. So here we have 3 windows. All right, I'm just gonna add some more details as you guys draw some of your basic shapes. I know there is a little balcony, and this is all going to be covered, so that's why I try not to put so much detail in my initial drawing. So yeah. Fun. So yeah, if you're behind, let me know. If don't worry, again, I'm repeating myself. I'm recording this. Only you will have access to this, so that should be exciting. Okay, so make sure you have paper towel or a cloth for your painting, something to dry your brush with. And I know a few of you are quite advanced. I haven't met the rest of the class, so I'd love to know what level you think you are, or share some of your work. That will be fantastic. So at least I can kind of gauge of where I can, what I can teach exactly and how we can approach this. But I always start, from the basics. So I know even if you're advanced, it doesn't hurt to just repeat the basics so we don't forget. But generally, I look at my, reference right now and give it some thought, think about it. Again, I mentioned the 2 triangles, so that is a very nice composition. A little bit heavier on the right side. So we look at our admit. Okay, we have another person coming in. Hello. Yes. Okay, so we have full class. Is this Anna? Amy. No, Amy.
Hi, guys.
Hello. So we are roughly sketching. We're sketching we're starting with the pencil sketch. Very, very rough. Don't worry too much about detail. Again, follow the perspective. Basic directions. Just look at the directions. Look at the big picture. And I was just analyzing now, and we're looking at the darks. I'm just looking at where the darks are, so they're pretty much quite at the bottom, like where it's closer to the water, so that's going to be more dense. This whole area will be a little bit more dense. In terms of color, just we're making some decisions of what color we're going to use, so definitely the blues and the yellows, and not too much colors. We want to have a limited palette. So here we go. And I'm sorry for those of you who joined a little bit late. I don't know where you are with the pencil sketch. So you can even start without the pencil sketch. Sometimes the painting looks even fresher with just very basic lines, as long as you know where my houses are going to end on this side and they're going to end on that side right here, and they will follow this basic shape. So that's all I need to know, and you'll see that will really help you be freer, not so confined, and kind of improvise with with shapes and colors and darks. So if you guys ready, I'm ready to start. Let me know. If you want me to wait a little bit, I will. And I extended the class. It's gonna end probably until at 1 automatically. So even if we're a little bit late, we can continue painting until 1. So no big deal. Okay, we have water, we have paper towels, and we are ready to go. Feel free to show me your drawing too, to check and double check, triple check if you have any questions about some aspects. Okay. Oh, I see half of this wall here is actually this is a reflection. Okay, so this is a reflection, then here, and then it's a reflection again. Okay. It's interesting. It's very interesting. I know it has a lot of details, but we need to learn the power of ignoring some of these. So it's a bit tricky. I know that's why I'm giving you this exercise today, because just consciously ignoring a lot of the details is step number 1 in actually creating a very nice moody painting that has feeling to it and emotion and movement. So that's the goal. Are we all ready? Yes, we're ready. We are ready. Okay, Gretchen says yes, we are ready to rock and roll. Okay, so I'm taking my very... Adi wants to show me something. Oh, and you can tape. I normally don't tape my paper, and a lot of people love that, to tape the paper so it doesn't move anywhere and does create some nice jagged edge, kind of a border. It's beautiful. It looks great. I just want to paint all the way to the edges because we will mat those anyway, so that beautiful edge may get lost. Whatever. So we're taking a bigger brush. It's all personal preference, really. So I'm taking the biggest brush, and we're gonna start from top and kind of move slowly to the bottom, but we will be painting all at the same time. It won't be just going top, going down. It will be pretty much everywhere, but bigger brush, and let's wet our paper. We're just wetting it everywhere, especially the top part. And if you have a spray bottle like I do here, my friends, remember I never used spray bottle before, but I started using it more and more. So yeah, why not? But yeah, you can just use, and I use such a soft pencil that now it's smearing everywhere, so half of this painting will be covered in pencil. So I'm just covering the whole paper. Lots of water. And you don't have to go all the way down, because now we're gonna start from the very top with lots of water. And I'm going to grab ultramarine. And as you can see, my palette normally is very messy. Today I did clean it. And I wanted to create more mess, new mess that I will keep till next time. So I'm getting some ultramarine here. Ultramarine is a very nice bright color. It's beautiful, but it is very blue. So I'm trying to think what kind of a sky I want. Yeah, and ultramarine looks pretty cool. And although in our reference there's really no color, we are going to create a color. So I'm just going all across everywhere. And we will start going down almost like having a gradient. Just create a little bit of a gradient, getting lighter and lighter as you go down. And see, very generous, be very generous with your paint. It can be really thick and intense. Don't paint too light, because watercolor does dry very light. So you can be super light. I mean, super intense, and it can end with some yellow. So the gradient can be from blue to yellow. So I'm grabbing some yellow here. I have cadmium yellow, and quickly just go everywhere, all across. That's going to be part of your painting. So the whole key is we're not filling in, we're not, painting by numbers. We are creating a nice, cool, wonderful painting. So you can go down with the yellow, but I just want to wipe here these areas that are going to be white, and be conscious of areas that you want to keep light. So these areas will be the paper. We are not going to paint on those areas. If anybody is just starting out, depends on your experience, you know that whatever we want to leave white, we will just keep the paper. And you can wipe, some with your paper towel, kind of create a little bit of a cloud maybe. See how I'm just taking my paper towel and just giving it some texture while things are still wet. You can add a bit of, and I don't really see this in my reference, but I'm just gonna add some more here just for variety, to add some variety. And again, while the paper is still very wet. So try to paint really fast without any worry. You should not worry about a thing. And with this big brush that I have, I'm gonna now have this puddle of ultramarine. I'd like to paint now my foreground here and continue with some medium value, and especially here this darker areas. So ignore everything else. We're gonna mix some blue, and let's add some raw sienna or some brown, whatever brown you have, to kind of tone it down a little bit so it's not so bright. And we will, with a very big broad brush strokes, again with using the same brush, big one, the biggest brush you have. If it's a flat brush, that's really good, it's very helpful. especially with buildings, because it immediately creates straight lines and nice edges. So here I'm creating this medium value with the blue, maybe throw in some more ultramarine here, and if things dissolve into one another, that's perfectly fine. Now we are looking at the big pictures, big puddles. We're just mapping everything, the whole thing. We're just mapping it everywhere. And you see this technique is wet on wet because your whole background is very wet. So we're just putting wet paint on wet surface. So that is wet on wet. And again, very thick. It can go all the way. We will have this sky obviously reflected here. So I'm just mapping colors very, very roughly. And putting here some of the same ultramarine here at the very bottom. So yeah, you can wet that area too. I usually paint very, very fast. So now I'm trying to slow down a little bit, and I find myself losing my train of thought, but this is good. So this is, again, getting a little brown to tone it down. So ultramarine with raw umber or raw sienna, or burnt sienna rather, can really give you very beautiful tones that are really amazing. So more sophisticated. So I'm just getting, again, this blue. And the ultramarine goes out fast, so I'll constantly have to replenish my palette. So here I'm just putting some of the blues. I know there will be some blues over here in these buildings. And this whole area is all in the shadow, so you can like completely cover this. So see how I'm just mapping everything all at the same time. I'm grabbing some alizarin crimson now and putting it in the blues. Looking at some darker shadow areas, and again, very, very big brush strokes, covering everything, maybe leaving some areas white, but just going big, big, big giant brush strokes. And normally you can just lift it and let it kind of flow down if you want. It will create some very nice kind of drippy effects. And we're also moving on the left side all at the same time. So all we're painting now is, again, mapping and big shapes, darker areas. Keep this area white where we have that canopy. And yeah, you can have some, dry brush. Maybe there's a little bit of white popping in here and there, but generally it's going to be this tone. And because that left side seemed to be kind of more in the light, I will warm it up with some more red rather than blue. So I'm taking some of this Indian yellow and the red, and I'm mixing some nice warm tone, and I just quickly just run it here on this side. Definitely here there is some nice warm areas. But basically, see, you almost have the whole paper covered right away. It's all immediately just covered with paint. And now we can start picking things up and getting into the darks. That's going to be our next step. Before we do that, let me just make sure I have everything. Now, while everything is still wet, there is an interesting effect that I'd like to show you. So see, with my bottle, I can just, everything is still wet, right? So you can just spray a little bit clean water on it, and it's gonna create these little dots. It's like white dots, kind of blooms, little blooms. It's cool. It's just another little technique here of creating some amazing, fun techniques. I'm adding some more blue over here. I just want to make sure that these houses are there. Okay. There'll be more gray. So anything that goes far away is not going to be as bright as elements that are closer to us. So anything that's closer is going to be high contrast, warmer, generally warmer and darker. So now let's quickly, while things are still wet a little bit, quickly start mapping the darks. And while this is still wet, you can, even the sky, you can do a bit of, you know, rays, like sometimes. So I take the paper towel, my paper towel, and you know, you can just do little swipes. That whole area. I was freaking out this morning because I had a blackout. We had a blackout in my neighborhood here, so I didn't have electricity. Can you believe this? Unbelievable, but I'm glad. I'm glad that it's all okay now. So anyway, so this particular Fabriano paper that I'm using is not the best, but yeah, you can wipe things out and create some interesting elements. So now quickly we want to do some darks right away, and I'm still gonna use my very big brush, the big flat, and I will take some of my indigo, which is very dark, kind of bluish color, and I will mix it. I'm just looking at this area right here, this whole reflection, and the area on the right, I see those as very dark. So I get some indigo, some burnt sienna, and I will mix this warmer dark tone and quickly kind of have these vertical lines, because that is the reflection of the buildings. So I want to have those there.
Your food is ready.
Okay, so we have here, and you can be, you know, big large brush strokes. Some could be vertical, but again, we don't want to overwork it. So one brush stroke and that's it. And then we can add some more later. But for now, only one or two big brush strokes. As you can see here, this shadow, and here on this side as well. Very dark. And now we can switch to a different brush. So I'm taking one of these calligraphy brushes that I have that have a nice tip, but they are very round and can carry a lot of paint on them, and start getting into some more detail. 11:30, so we have a whole hour and probably and a half. We have plenty of time, so don't worry if you're feeling like you're a little bit behind. Everything is recording. We will be okay. Before I get into the smaller brush, I just want to get this warm tone here in the very front, that reflection. While things are still wet, I really want to make sure that I get this nice color. So I'm using the Indian yellow and a little bit of green, just a little bit. I don't want to use too much green because I want to keep it more in the blues and the yellows. So here we have some reflection happening. Very rough again. And again, just squint your eye. Sometimes look at the reference, squint your eye, and exactly what you see is what we paint. And don't worry about being precise or making a mistake. Just throw your paint really roughly. And that's the beauty of watercolor. You can be very bold with it, and you have better results when you are bold, really. So we kind of put this whole area here already. Maybe a couple of these dots with a spray bottle.
Hey Lucy, sorry.
Yeah.
What size are we making this on?
Any size you want. I'm using 15 by 22, but if you want 14 by 17, whatever paper you have. Do you have like a pad? A watercolor pad? What do you have?
I have the watercolor pad, but then I bring the big sheet. Are
Yeah.
you using the full big sheet like the one we get it, or
Yes.
I don't know.
18, yeah, Canson 18 by 24 is fantastic. That's also wonderful. So then you have to really use your bigger brushes and just throw water everywhere and start blobbing these big shapes right now. That's exactly what we're doing, the big areas. So focus.
When are you gonna do the drawing first or afterwards when you put the water?
We're not drying anything. I don't even use hair
No,
dryer.
no, the drawing, the
Oh, the drawing first. Just
First
sketch your drawing first,
sorry,
definitely.
I came late. I have somebody in my house right now.
Oh, it's okay. Don't worry. This is recording.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So I'm going to now focus a little bit on. We're gonna start pulling out. Okay. Before we pull out. Okay. Let's just indicate. Yeah. Now moving on to some more details. So I'm gonna focus a little bit on these rooftops here and get some nice warmer tones. So alizarin crimson, some of the Indian yellow. So we're gonna keep it nice and warm. So alizarin crimson, Indian yellow. It makes an interesting, almost orange tone. So very quickly, I will just very quickly with very quick brush strokes, even dry brush, because probably by now this area is already dry. So just move your brush horizontally, sometimes create this whole interesting feeling. And watercolor, everything about watercolor is edges. So some edges is good to disappear. We don't want to, fill in like paint by numbers. So here I'm just gonna run clean water with my brush and have some of this edge sort of dissolve into the distance. That's how we create sense of space. So here again is this crimson. I like that warm color that it creates. It's just very quickly, basically mapping some of these nice cool shapes right here. Move your brush fast, and you can be very abstract with some of these, especially in the very beginning. So leave some areas. I know some areas will be blue because windows do reflect the sky, so they take up that color a lot of the times. I'm just moving, and again, you can dissolve some of that edge right here again with clean water. I'm picking up some colors from my palette. Some areas, not all edges, but some areas. And I'm moving on to the left side again with the corresponding elements. And sometimes when I mix my colors on my palette, things spill, kind of spatter a little bit, which is good. I really welcome those kind of spatters. Okay, so here again is that warm tone. If you don't have Indian yellow, just use regular yellow with red or alizarin crimson. It will create some pretty cool, sophisticated tone. So here again, hold your brush lightly. Don't worry too much about what type of mark it leaves, as long as it leaves interesting marks. Watercolor is about creating really fun areas. You're moving with this whole flow of water that you're creating. So there's not too much control other than just gentle guiding of this interesting medium that is so free, really. So now we're starting to get a little bit darker, so don't be afraid to mix lots of pigment. So here I'm getting a little bit of red, some more blue, because I'm starting to pull out all these darks on this side. And I know this is going to cast a little bit of a shadow. And it is blue over there. Yeah, you can kind of follow the local color of your painting, but always keep in mind what your overall tone is. So yeah, you can just add a little bit, but then it's starting to look a bit too dark, so I will you know, lift it a bit. So again, you can just take your paper and let things drip a bit. That's gonna free you. And here I'm just adding some more. So anything that's hit by the light, like for example this rooftop here, it will be nice and warm. Yellow is a beautiful color for light. Mix nice big puddles with pigment. Don't worry too much about not having enough. That's why it's good to have larger palettes, because this way you can afford to, you know, mix bigger puddles of pigment and color. So here I see some nice bright yellow, so you can just quickly put those in there too. That's gonna be a nice kind of maybe accent, and it will draw attention there. So I'm adding it, and respectively on this side. Yeah. Oh, okay. So here we go, and I'm just adding some more yellow over here. We kind of a dry brush. So the whole key to watercolor is make sure you don't go too many times in the same area, time and time again. Mostly 2 layers at the most. So these are all just alla prima. We did the big initial wash, and while everything was still wet, we just keep adding a little bit of color here and there now, kind of getting the medium values and establishing shapes. So here is a little, not one shape, there is another bit of a shape. So we can dissolve those, you know, I run clean water and paint them, but then put some water in the edges to have those edges disappear, because I want to have depth in the painting. So little by little we're gonna start adding darks, but before that, again, keep it bluish, orange, yellow, not too many different colors. Very limited palette again. So I know I see here some interesting blue and yellow. Wait a minute. So this is yellow, and maybe some ultramarine, and it's gonna give me a gray, interesting gray. So here we go. On this side, obviously this is gonna be in the shadow, so it is a perfect color. And yeah, you can leave some areas not completely filled with paint. See how it just fills parts of it, and maybe some edges, leave some edges untouched. Okay. Okay, there's this chimney. Okay. Great. And sometimes, yeah, you can practice on a separate pad if you don't feel very confident with certain brush strokes, like, oh, they're not so straight or not so bold, and don't be timid. Practice, practice, practice. Practice makes perfect. 11:47, that's 12 o'clock. Always have to be conscious of the time, because we don't want to spend too much time. That's how we lose our boldness, when we get, you know, into million of details. So now I'm going to move into the darks. And I'm getting my favorite indigo color. I really love that color. If you don't have indigo, use any like paint gray, or just dark blue, mix dark blue with dark red. It's gonna get you some nice, and maybe a brown, dab into the brown. That's gonna get you a nice dark color. But here I'm mixing my burnt sienna with indigo, and I'm going to quickly adding now darks. And that is really the fun part, because it will start making the painting look realistic. So here I'm just adding, and it could be, you can use a dry brush technique, meaning everything is already dry and the brush doesn't have too much water on it. So very, very kind of a brushy, add some darks. Here, don't worry about the small detail. Again, squint your eye and see whatever you see as a shape. And it doesn't have to be all completely perfect. Yeah, maybe there's some, so everything is a suggestion, just a little bit of a suggestion here and there. Now here we have some railing. Elements that emphasize perspective are great, like railing, for example. So keep in mind these lines are good to show. Here we have, again, this whole reflection happening. So yeah, definitely anything that's closer to us is nice to be nice and warm. So I'm using reds with the indigo, maybe some browns. Here's some railing. You can be really rougher with your brush strokes. So here is a bit of a railing happening. And you can have this dry brush technique a little bit. So it's nice to have, even though my brush is so big, it has a tip, very nice pointy tip that creates a small detail if I want to right away. So move it in any direction. Your brush can lay amazing strokes just if you lay it horizontal, just like that, without using it as a pencil. The brush is a brush, it's not a pencil really, so it does create some amazing, wonderful strokes. So here we go, some dry brush, which is the reflection, and I will quickly, and now you can actually dissolve some edges. I see some pretty sharp edges here, so I can dissolve them, some of them. And every and each painting is going to look very different. See, this is the beauty of watercolor. We all have different approach. I'm sure you're getting to a particular areas in a different way, but as long as we are following the main principle, big and then small. So now I'm going to move on the right side and start looking at my shadow there and the very dark areas. I'll use probably more blues again, some red, the indigo, and let's map those babies right here. So I see some dark right there, and again, squint your eye. This whole area will be dark, almost like a dry brush line here. Try to be bold again with your lines, and don't draw complete perfect. Like if you see a window, don't draw complete perfect rectangle. You can just have one line, another, just a little dot here, a little there. It's fun, like we're creating some interesting techniques. So now here I see this nice element, the straight line of like a column of that building. I will make it a dry brush, so no water, just dab your brush so there's no water, because it's very close to us. I'd like this to be a nice element, very boldly painted. So it's okay if it's a bit not quite perfect. It's okay. You can always, and make sure it's not all the same everywhere. You can always, dab some areas. That creates more interest. Alright, so again, there are some structural nice lines these houses, that these houses have. I love those. I don't know what the purpose of them are, but they do create some very nice graphic interests. So we can quickly, we'll get to that. Before that, I'm gonna add some more dark here. This whole area on the right should be quite dark. So moving these browns, getting those browns and reds here, and the indigo, creating some nice dark puddles. You see how I have 3 puddles now, a darker red, darker kind of a purple, and all the indigo. So these are all going to be my shadow colors on this side. I know there is a tree. I'm not gonna, I'd like not to use green because that will introduce like a fifth color. I don't wanna have too much colors, too many colors. So here we're gonna keep it into this family of blues and reds and yellows. So I'm just creating some very, very very rough and loose. Here we have some shadow over there. Maybe there's some columns. Again, sketchy, very, very sketchy. And so you see how the whole area is kind of in the shadow. And I've left this purple on purpose, white rather, the paper, because I wanted to add some brighter blue there as a reflection of the sky. So you can always like put some clean blue there. And continuing with our shadow colors. And that's not going to be the darkest dark, although it does look dark. I will put some even darker accents and just pull some areas and make a more higher contrast. I know here it's a bit more dark. It does look a bit abstract, but believe me, at the end it's going to look really neat. So don't worry if things are not quite architecturally correct. All right. And feel free to show me what you have. Again, more gray. We're just extending this whole darker area. And I want to lighten it up because it gets a bit lighter as it goes back. Let's add some more rooftops over here. They will be warmer. And again, because they're far away, they're not going to be too, I don't know, too bright. I still want to tone them down a little bit. So how we tone them down, I just add blue to them, and it does give you a gray. And that's it. And not too much painting again and again and again. So I'm going to now look at this yellow house on the right. It has some very nice details. So now we can have fun with adding some details. How about that? I'm going to add, these lines quickly, maybe dry brush them. Don't worry if they're not exactly precisely what they are over there. I'm just adding a little chimney, small lines. The small lines could be added with a rigger brush. So right now I'm just going to add a bit of a thicker lines, and then I'll come back again with some more refined detail a little bit later. But just adding some indication now of detail. Okay, and again with the laying the brush kind of horizontally like this does leave some interesting elements. Those could be your windows, really. A window could be just a line, really. 2 brush strokes, pop, there is a window. I know there's probably some little railing. I don't want to be very, be sure that you have variety, like thick, thin. Like some areas are really refined, and we'll get to it. Right now we're just still dabbling with the bigger shapes, so we'll get to it, but I'm just starting to slowly but surely adding some more details. So now this blue house on the right, I really wish it was a little bit more intense in my painting, so I'm gonna mix some more blue and just add some more to it. See, I just added this like a second layer, a little bit on the top, and you can let things, you know, kind of drip if you like. All right, so here we go with a bit of a blue, and you can use this blue to add little details here on the side. See, I see something, shutter, something on that side. Okay, and just that adds a lot more interest, like have a little bit of, you know, lines of those shutters, even if it's exaggerated a little bit, that's good. It adds interest. Kind of improvising, really. Sometimes I wish I don't see so much detail, so we do ignore some and make up others. So here more lines. I don't want this to be so straight, so I just added something. I know it's there, and that is a window right here. See how I'm just running my brush vertical, and don't forget your perspective. Very important when painting buildings. We don't want the perspective to be off, like things to go this direction where they should be in the other direction. So here we have another dark. It's still looking quite abstract, that's okay. Now we're gonna start adding some more darks, and the darks will tighten it up a little bit. And as things dry, we can always, you know, wait a bit and add some more detail. So I really wanted this blue house to stand out as my foreground. I want to also soften some of this edge just a bit, a little bit, not the whole thing. Now, looking at more darks, again, now indigo, so I'm gonna get into even more dark. I'm getting the indigo and looking at areas such as over here is definitely dark. Don't even think about what this is, just make sure that you're looking at it as a shape. Like I see a darker shape, I know there's some flowers, don't worry about those, too much information, too much detail, I'll just ignore because it doesn't add to your painting. So as long as something adds to the painting, yes, add it. Here we have some darks, and again, I'm getting now with the darker dark, so just pure indigo really. And here we have where the buildings, the wall meets the water, it will be some dark area. And with the same kind of symmetrical, I'm going to make these reflections of these windows right here. They do reflect, and that whole dark does reflect on this side. So be very bold with that. Don't worry about flowers at this point. It's not important again. Here I'm just adding again indigo. And this building here, paying attention to this reflection, just doing some vertical lines. Vertical lines are perfect in showing reflection. Just very boldly, some darker on top of this medium value, maybe a little bit going across, but then just keep these verticals. It's perfect to show water room. And I would let it drip, but I think I painted it a little bit too thick, so it's not dripping quite well, but it's okay. Here we're going to, and again, don't worry, you have to be super brave with watercolor, don't worry about making mistakes. always teach that there are no mistakes really. We had this experiment where I asked my students to bring me their painting that they thought it's going in the trash. They thought there it's a big mistake and they didn't want to even look at it anymore. And they painted it a million layers, and I said, no, this is can be revived, and I showed them their tricks. So no worries about making mistakes. So here again, I just want to keep adding a little bit of this very cool shadow, reflection. It's so cool. So I'm just adding some more. And I love that yellow there, also reflecting from the buildings. So here you can just add some more of that, kind of brighten it up a little bit. Right, it just disappears into the distance. And I know it's turning into green, which was not my intention, so you can always, add blue instead. Some more blue so it doesn't have too many colors. Like keep it in that whole family. So again, continuing with our shadow colors, like really the very dark. Roughly create some lines here that I'm seeing. Just add some more shadow into that canopy right here. Vertical lines, shadows, just seeing it almost as an abstract. And then we can use our rigger and start adding some more details into this. So again, quickly we can move to the left. How are we doing with time? We're doing good. So I'm glad I extended this a little bit more because I know it's a lot going on in this. So here it's okay if you don't add any more details. We have to be very selective so we can decide. How about only the right side will have the most detail. Here on the left can just be softer, less detail. Here I'm just going to add a couple of maybe just some windows, and that's pretty much it. And the windows are just brush strokes, vertical really. Yes, and maybe here this nice rooftop. Sometimes I prefer not even sketch it with pencil ahead of time because I feel confined with all these pencil lines. But it's important to have it just as a guide again. And very soon I'm gonna get the rigger and we're gonna have a lot of fun. And the rigger brush is a very thin brush with long hair that creates some fabulous details. So no excuse me. No flowers, no itty bitty stuff, so don't worry about any of those. I'd like to add some yellow. Yellows are great for light, as I said, so I'm gonna probably pop it in here. I know there's maybe some shrubbery, some trees, so yellows in the light. Here there will be some light popping in. Just one stroke and just leave it, and it does its own thing. When you leave it alone, it starts doing its own thing and it dries in a fun way. Here another one, some more yellow, and here these trees could be just kind of a yellowish, dirty yellow that I just grabbed from my puddles over here. They could be very, very light in the background, and don't worry too much about those. So here we did the reflection. Let's have some yellow in that reflection too, because it just coming from the buildings. And you see, we're basically painting everywhere all at the same time. I know there is a little house here, but no worries. Anything in the back should not be so obvious. And should be treated lightly. Alright, and now I'm thinking how to put some more dark maybe to pop this area here. It does have some stuff happening, so yeah, you can indicate now here's some tree maybe, just by dabbing, having some interesting textures, creating with a dry brush, like really dry brush. So it is a complex landscape. Don't feel frustrated if you're not quite where you think you should be. You will just add and brighten it up only in few areas and pop boldly a few darks, and it's gonna be it. It will be done. So not too much detail, just a few. Just want to have this whole area darker now. Somehow it feels too broken, and I think I'm gonna make up something. Maybe there is a railing somewhere here, so I will use my little rigger brush eventually to create that. But this reflection is closer to us, and it is reflecting probably the blue house. So I just want to make it a bit darker. And that's it. Like not too much, don't overdo it, and kill some of the edges. That's pretty much the key to a cool painting in watercolor. Not all edges need to be sharp or the same width or really look. Everything should be variety. You have to have variety of elements. So I'm adding thick, thin, big, small, all kinds of different scale. Maybe you can have little dabs, and you can have even some spatter. So I'm looking at this, what can I spatter it with? You can have some maybe orange, because it's a nice warm painting. So I'm mixing red and yellow, and here you can just have a little bit of spatter here and there, especially here. And now with the rigger brush, I'm sorry, I have some allergies going on. So I'm taking the rigger brush and I'm gonna add a lot of fun details, and they will be kind of sketchy, so you will enjoy those if you have this brush. If you don't, just grab a brush with a nice tip and just start adding. Like, we don't see these things usually, but in this particular reference, but add them like little antennas or something sticking out. Those houses have all kinds of interesting things sticking out usually. So even if your reference doesn't have it, you can always add it. Just improvise and do it in a very sketchy way. Just throw your lines fearlessly. You can quickly show some nice. Here, a suggestion again. That's a window right there. Just a suggestion. Again, a little line. And this way it starts to tighten up a little bit, so it shows some stuff happening. Here is another window. Not too much water. You want your lines to be nice, crisp, almost like dry brushed. So you notice how we are not really painting architectural drawings. We are painting paintings, so we don't paint all that we see, just a few. So I really like this whole stuff right here. I'm gonna just give a suggestion of these lines. It's gonna give that whole European look of the house. Maybe over here. And again, just improvise. Don't worry if it's not exactly the same. I know some are going straight, some are going at an angle, so just put a few in a dry brush technique. And immediately gives that whole feel. Here we have 2 windows and then go around 1, 2. Just pretty much sketchy sketch. And again, I'm getting some of this dark. And I want to show just windows again with the lines. And just put 1, 2 lines. Don't like outline things too much. Just a suggestion. Here is a chimney. Another maybe window here. See, just brush strokes, like I'm laying it and putting dab, 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 dab. That's it. These are the windows on that rooftop. Just little dabs pretty much. Here you can have some lines. I'm mixing, you know, my warmer tones now. Here maybe there is like a little stuff. Only a suggestion. Another, the windows, bunch of lines. Again, a suggestion of some lines. And the eye, the brain, fills in the gaps. We are only showing where it's going, the direction, and then everything else is the job of the viewer's brain. That's what keeps the viewer really glued to your painting, because they're making sense and it looks really interesting, and then you see what it is. Okay, so here we have some more lines, and don't be afraid to have a line, you know, extend. It can go past where it should be. That's what's the beauty of this whole sketchy. It does create sense of energy and movement. And yeah, you can have some spatter with this darker paint. Okay, here I wanted to paint the railing, so again, very quickly with a thin brush, dab, dab, and having these dry brush lines right away. Maybe some dark here to just pop things out. And it is very, very impressionistic. And that was the whole goal. So here I see this whole railing that we did. I'm gonna add some more lines to kind of reinforce and emphasize this direction. And emphasize some on that direction. Anything that's in the water as a reflection will be softer. So I'm just throwing some water here, right there. Maybe some more lines on this side. Just to give a sense. Yes, it is a village, it's buildings. Again, I don't see any chimneys here, but I'd like to add those. So I'm just dabbing my brush. 1, 2. Maybe there is an antenna, something sticking out. Here too. On those buildings as well, the ones in the back. Just gently, very refined type of brush strokes. And you can, you know, add a bunch of birds if you'd like. That does give a lot of life to it, so the birds are like just brush mark, like 1, 2, 1, 2, something. Just create movement. I like for everything. So at this point, I'm just looking and analyzing my painting, because now all it needs is basically finishing touches. You should not go too much into too much detail. We're keeping it super simple, so I'm just adding maybe some yellows here. That yellow especially is very cool to add even on top of the dark. It does show, because yellows are quite transparent. I mean, not transparent, or the opposite, opaque. So they look really nice. They work great for pulling out details. And here I see maybe some more here. This rigger is kind of the thick rigger. I have one that is really thin, so I can use that. Let's see what kind of lines that one creates. Very nice, thin. And pay attention to where your focal point is. So in my case here is this whole warm house on the right, it seems. So I'm gonna just add a little bit more lines, like dry brush. Again, it's an impression. Maybe some more lines over here, but just 1, 1, 2, and that's it. You're not overdoing it. There is probably a suggestion of something happening here, but don't worry if you lost your houses in the back. Actually, that's good. And maybe some yellow in this, because this building became so blue. We want the colors to be connecting and to be everywhere. So for those of you who've taken my class before, if we see yellow here, and we don't see any over here, I'm just gonna pop some. That's gonna keep your painting together, like really unifying the whole thing. So keep the perspective correct. Keep it in mind how it's going in certain direction. There is a cool balcony. Now I just noticed that. That's an interesting balcony here, but we can skip that. I know, we get enamored by elements and we can get lost completely. So let's just not get lost. Here we have a nice yellow, maybe accent, and I'm just putting little dabs. So these are basically the finishing touches, just a little dab on that dark background. Sometimes I look at my painting and I'm like, how can it needs a punch. From time to time I get this urge to just punch it with something bright, and I'm getting now this ultra yellow to give it a bit of a punch, you know what I mean, like an emphasis on something. So here I'm just getting some super nice punchy yellow right there. Maybe it has some yellow over here, just a little dot. Those cadmium yellows could be quite cool for that. I know people are trying to get away from cadmium for health reasons. I don't blame them. But there's plenty of cool yellows, like, I don't know which one I'm using the Indian yellow, but that one's different. That's more transparent. There's some really, really nice yellow. So here I'm just gonna punch a bit, some yellow here. It's going to freshen the whole thing and lead my eye into this area right here. So yeah, and let things flow. See how it's flowing everywhere, little by little. It's coming together. And yeah, we put the yellow here, maybe just a little dot somewhere there. It's hard to explain this technique, it's just because it's just so impressionistic, and I'm sure you all have your own version of this. It's not probably quite the same, so and that's a good thing, because yeah, some people do paint tighter, but as long as you keep that basic idea that some edges should disappear. We don't paint everything and anything. Some things could be unified, like sometimes I'm looking here and it all looks like doesn't serve any purpose. Some brush strokes are just, does it bring to it, does it add to it, or does it just take away from it? So you make a decision, be very selective of what you want to paint. So in this particular case, I'm just seeing this whole bunch here of brush strokes and not quite selective, so not quite doing much, so I'm gonna unify. So we're gonna unify. I'm taking my ultramarine and I just run this big, I put just a big blob of dark and I'm unifying this, so because it doesn't serve much to the original idea. And now it's more unified a little bit, because it takes away sometimes if you have too much chatter really in the painting. As long as it serves a purpose, I don't mind. And even if you have a million details, if it serves a purpose, that's perfectly okay. Yeah, there's no really rule against it. Sometimes we may end up with a lot of details, and you just take the big brush and just kind of swipe all over, like, or some area, just do a big swipe and it will unify everything and it's gonna look fabulous. So yeah, these are the things that I try to teach. I know some are so intuitive, but I hope you're getting the gist of it. Because it's so really not quite the traditional kind of fill in and do this, do that, one layer, two. We just don't forget the finishing touches. They're so important, because many times we feel we're done. We feel that, okay, we're finished. Well, not quite. Like maybe if you run this super bright color here and there, it will help. So just one or two, and not too much. And of course, there's the danger of overworking our paintings, which I very often get to, this danger zone. So it's important to know when to stop. We all do. With watercolor, it's very easy to lose our sight and start feeling here, feeling there. Squint your eye, look at it. Does it tell a nice story? Does it give a little sense of light? Watercolor is the perfect medium to give a nice sense of light. So definitely. And we can always perfect this craft. The more we paint, the better we get. I always encourage people sketching daily. Oh, I'm using a different mouse. Okay, here. So everything is good. Alright. And feel free to show me what you have. We have time, we have plenty of time. You can stay until 1. As I said, I did extend the class a little bit, so if you feel like you need to paint, or ask me questions, very, very important. Questions are super important. And show me work. Show me your work. Right, then you can always, water it, kind of wet it if you feel like you got into more of some muddy areas. You can always put some clean water and with paper towel, just a nice swipe. It's gonna give an interesting kind of a foggy feel. So I'm gonna show you here. So for example, this whole area that I unified, I'm just putting some water on it, and I'm gonna like wipe a bit, and as if there's some sort of create this feeling as if there's some smoke or fog or something happening. And I will add some more color because I don't know how it was a little bit too much. So yeah, things like this. Nothing is out of the question. And you can always take white and pop in some highlights here and there. Of course, we don't want to overdo the white because not quite really part of the watercolor, although it's great for highlights. So who said we can't use white? I do freely a lot, especially in portraits. You guys see me, who's ever taken the portrait class, I do use it for some really nice highlighted areas. So white could be great to pop in some lost light or highlight. So I just take it directly from the tube. Here I have one laying, it's titanium. You just open it, and you can actually even spatter with white, especially in water. See, even there is some interesting detail there. So you can grab some, make a little puddle with this whole white here on the side, and do a bit of a spatter. That's going to add some sparkle to it. Yeah, why not? And with a pointy brush, I just dip directly into the paint. And we're going to add maybe a lost edge here and there. Maybe a very refined, just dry brush very gently. Not too much. Again, this is this whole rooftop. Sometimes reinforcing the perspective does help, like emphasize some direction in certain ways, and of course dry brush it. And again, we should not overwork it, like I'm doing right now a little bit, but again, maybe a thin line here. Just very, very selectively. Again, these are the finishing touches. You can do little dabs, like dab, little dots. That does create a sense of movement. Alright, here's a window. A little dot here, just to freshen it up a little bit. Here, maybe another line. But other than that, I think we're pretty close. And again, any questions, shout out, like unmute or mute or unmute. I can't follow the chat. I don't know how to even follow the chat, but also spatter, a little bit of spatter is gonna freshen it up. Some more, maybe. Yes, and I think I'm gonna call it a day for this painting in particular. I think I should not be touching it anymore. Maybe, okay, here we go with a maybe. Maybe a little bit of dark in the very front. Just dry brush with indigo that whole line that I wanted to have, and I sort of lost a little bit, so just boldly, just one touch, and that's it. And I know it has some stuff underneath going on. Fun. And your lines could be super crazy. Like you can just go diggly is there such a word, like just doodle it everywhere and move it around. You can, it doesn't have to be, I tend to draw more straight lines here. Some people are more curvy, like use more curvy lines. So everybody has a different kind of sensibility towards this medium, which is perfectly fine. Or like more of a dots and dabs. Others are smoother. It's all good as long as we follow this whole principle of big to small, because if we start with the small, we're gonna get lost. We're gonna lose our values. Like the values are super important. The values are, you know, the very dark and the very light. So as long as we keep those in mind, we are on a good path. Okay, so. And you can have one area with lots of detail, just but pick the area, not everything. In this particular style, it's not photorealism, obviously, so just pick one area, maybe this house, and make this nice, ultra realistic with lots of details, but everything else could be very loose. So that's going to create a really great interest in your painting and intrigue. It's like, oh, okay, we see this, but what's going on over there? Well, we don't know quite, so it's cool. It's a nice little approach to creating fun paintings. So I'm mixing. What am I missing? This is a nice, cool color. This whole Indian yellow, I really like a lot. It's so warm. It's really warm. So with red, it creates a very, very nice warm tone. Just adding some more over here, and that really brings the eye even more. So hope you guys having as much fun as I do here with this. And remember, again, how to revive painting that's become a little too much or too muddy. Always get a very bright color and just strike it with that color and do some nice bright areas. I'm very curious to know what you're coming up with. And feel free to give me ideas of what you prefer to paint next time, if you have any preferences. Otherwise, next time I was thinking something more nature, like a lake with trees and again some water and reflection. That probably would be a nice thing. But let me know if you have any other preferences and we'll squeeze them in. We can even paint 2 paintings per session, like force ourselves to paint so fast that we really loosen up. That's also an idea. But yeah, the more I touch it, the more I'm gonna start losing it, so I'm stopping right now. And you guys keep painting, and I'm open for questions. I wish I can walk around and see what you're doing, like in the in-person class. That was great. I could just give really individual attention more and more. But feel free to send me via email what you came up with if you're shy to show it here. And that's perfectly okay. I can comment, and I promise to create a PDF with our basics, like what we went through, with stages and pictures and explaining what's what. I know sometimes it's difficult to explain and to follow when you're painting and then looking at the screen at the same time, so it may be a little bit difficult, but when you have the video, and I will have a little file, like a note PDF with all the notes of what's really going on. And key points, key principles to remember and follow at all times. So again, don't forget, anything far away should be lighter. So
I'm happy to share mine, but I'm struggling in the middle part of the painting.
okay, let me see. Oh wow, that looks awesome. Okay, I'm just looking. Yeah, it looks great.
Where the orangey part is.
This part here, right? Where the house is. Just add oh, here, right here. Okay. So just keep it non-distinct. Like, don't worry about, because it's all in the distance. I would probably add some more details at the, where the houses are. On this side here, the focal point, just to create a focal point. Everything else could be
Go left.
rough.
Go left.
All right, so we have John there. Oh, nice, awesome, beautiful. I love the planes again. I love the colors. Very loosely. You guys loosening up. I know John said he's more of a very realistic. Wow, look at, and Gretchen, awesome. Look at this. Yes, nice and loose. I like the darks. You can punch it with some more brights, Gretchen. Maybe you just get some. Hopefully I can see it better, but you can get some really kind of like few accents with yellow in some areas. And maybe introduce some yellow onto this blue house. I know we sort of separated it, but have some pop in, yeah, on the blue house on the side, yeah. A little bit.
Any darks in it too? It felt like it was getting a little too washed out.
Yeah, you may get some punch areas here with dark, definitely.
Thanks, this was good. I love how fast you go. It prevents you from overthinking.
Exactly. If we just go here, there, here, we'll forget what we're doing. So it's like, hurry up. But we can go even faster. We can just have a smaller size next time, and we can do 2 to completely loosen up, and it will be all nature. And believe me, I kind of threw you in the fire with this one, because this one is difficult. It has buildings. Buildings are hard in perspective and reflection. I purposefully threw you in this difficult subject to, yes, so you can kind of get a feel for it, and you'll see next time it's just gonna feel like a breeze. And we'll, especially with nature, is way easier. It's much smoother, and it's really not so much thinking going on, specifically, houses and railings and perspective. So you'll see. But feel free to send me your finished pictures, because here on the screen I see something, but it's not quite. Okay, so I see this is Amy. Very nice. Yeah, you joined us so late, and here you are. You almost finished it. Yes, nice and bold. I see a lot of boldness. Try not to outline too much, Amy, like not to have so many dark lines around the buildings. Have some things disappear.
Not to do the outline now?
Yes,
Define.
some of these dark outlines, especially on the top, like avoid those, because they kind of just creating some very kind of rough look. But yeah, just at the bottom, look at your picture, look where the shadow is.
I'm gonna try that one more time, when I will have the time, because I started late.
Yes, and again, look at, instead of looking at lines, look at shapes. That's what watercolor is. Look at the shapes first, and then you add some lines and details. And again, not all, just some, and keep it as a suggestion.
I will try it.
Yeah, you can try it again if you want, or just try a different. I get bored.
Trees and landscape will be good next one.
Yes, we're gonna do something a little bit easier with forests, and maybe just a sunset, just a general sunset with some trees behind and water in the front with some reflection, that will be really probably a lot more easier, a lot easier to paint.
I can't wait to have your class in your presence.
Oh, I know, me too, because I can walk around and I can really
Exactly,
talk.
that's what I need, yeah, that's.
I know, in person. Hopefully soon, hopefully soon. But don't hesitate to send me, actually, to email me your pictures, and I will reply, and I will send you some more information and some more feedback on what's going
Lucy,
on.
are you saying in the, like this, what I did, the outliners, like with the pen, it's not a good idea to do that?
From what I saw from the screen, I saw, you know, kind of a thick outlines around with the dark. So try to avoid this. Just paint shapes rather than dark lines everywhere. You know, see, this
Okay.
is a shape, this is a shape. So wet your paper. It's very important to paint wet on wet. Start wet, just put blobs, just different blobs of
Blob.
color, like basically blobs, yeah. And
Okay.
then you can add a little bit of lines, just a little,
Okay.
yeah. But yeah, just keep asking me questions if you guys have any. Don't worry, don't be shy at all. We are all learning. I'm learning myself all the time. At all times, things change, styles change. Favorite.
I'm gonna try to hold mine up, but I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, look at this. Yes. Oh, I do see.
don't normally paint loose. I
Oh,
really-
wow. And look at you. I love it.
This side is a mess to me.
Right. No, it doesn't. It doesn't look like a mess at all, actually. And you know, sometimes if you feel that this area is a bit messy, just take the big brush and just create a dark silhouette. Like, close your eye. I mean, squint your eyes. Create just a bit of a silhouette, and don't go into the detail. And focus only on this. Only on that. So sometimes if I feel lost with some areas and it's too much going on, dark color, go over it, and nice silhouette everywhere. Just darken it and only focus on this. So yeah, definitely. But yeah, everybody, I'm glad to see that you're all very bold. You're not afraid. And always, at the end, the finishing touches are very important. It's the bright punch in some areas, like we did with the yellow. Unfortunately, watercolor does dry light, and sometimes I think I put some brighter finishing touches and then they get lost. So I go back and sort of reintroduce that. But again, this is where the danger comes from, overworking it, putting too much color and too many layers, so we don't want to do that. So,
Lucy, do you pre-stretch your paper?
no, I just cut it from the full sheet, cut it in half, and I didn't even tape it. So, did you tape yours? I didn't see how was yours?
I just taped enough to stabilize, but I didn't tape wall to wall.
Oh, okay, yeah, right. Some papers are not great. Some may warp, so it's good to tape. But
So how do you get the buckles out?
it goes away. It just goes away after a while. Like by tomorrow, it will be straightened. And I know now it's a bit of a buckle, but after it's all completely dry, you will see it will straighten out. Or you just go to an edge, and I just take it and kind of run it to the edge, and that's how I straighten it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, really, no worries if it's really buckled. Eventually, if you wanna, frame it, it will be matted. It will be behind a plexiglass, and if you put it in a pad, like in a pile of other paintings, they end up being all completely flat. So no worries.
Very good. Thanks for doing this.
No, thank you for joining.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining. And I know usually in the beginning it's kind of difficult to follow maybe or to just understand the whole concept, but the whole concept is pretty simple. Again, I will outline it. Big, from big to small. Always look at the big shapes, always look at the big pictures. Just wet. We start very, very wet, wet on wet, blobs of paint, even if it's outside of the lines, like paint outside of the lines, outside of our pencil lines. And then later we introduce some details. So that is the whole key to a successful painting. So definitely, I will send you the reference a little bit, not the day before. I will send it a few days before next time. So you have some time to look at it, to make a plan. You know, sometimes we look at our reference and we decide, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And here I'm just adding a little bit of dark here on the bottom right, because I feel like this is too light. My eye goes there, so I wanna, that's a way of unifying your painting, just eliminating some noise pretty much from here and there. And sometimes a painting could be just a preliminary sketch to a better version of this painting. So that's, a lot of artists do this little sketchy to decide where the values are going to be in, and then they paint it again, and then it looks really great because you're already predetermined. You know what you're going to focus on. So yeah, feel free to repeat the exercise if you like. Send me the pictures. It will be fun. Yeah, I can't wait really to teach in person. It's very different. In person, I will be walking around, looking at everybody and everyone's painting. I will catch you in midair if you're in a crisis, in the middle of a crisis. It happens, but it's all fun.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you, John. Thanks for joining. Okay, have a nice day. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, and don't hesitate to have, some refined elements. Again, with that rigor, having these little antennas and chimneys sticking out and stuff, they add some nice feel to the whole thing. And you guys, if you're done, you're free to go, or you can just hang out with me. I'm still putting my finishing touches. So again, little lines, and feel free to show me what you have.
When are you going to send us the recording?
The recording will be sent probably tomorrow, because I need to process that video first. I'm wondering how I can do it so only you have access. Can YouTube? Oh yeah, I can have a private video basically, and I'll just give you like access to that. So
Okay.
yeah, by tomorrow, for sure.
I'm not going to do anything else until you give me some pointers.
Okay,
I
good.
think I've made enough, man.
It's better not to overdo it. And Lindsay, good to see you. I've seen you so much on YouTube, on Facebook and the social media.
Yeah, I know it. I feel like I know you, but I don't know how to say your name.
Yes, Lyudmila. Pronounce it Lyudmila. Just ignore the Y. But a lot of people call me Lucy for short, so Lucy's
Okay.
fine.
Lucy.
Lucy.
Lucy, do you know Jeff Jacobs in Washington?
No.
Okay, that's who I took watercolor from.
Okay, there's some really great ones out there. It's good, yeah, it's good to take from different teachers, different things. Everybody contributes their own, and it's all good. Eventually, yeah, you will develop your own style at some point.
I'm always done very detailed. So this is hard for me.
We'll practice. you'll see session 3 will be easier, way easier. Lots of water, let it drip. That's the key.
All right, ladies, well, y'all have a good week, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lindsay. See you next week.